In this build episode, I'll be going over the Empire version 0 and what I didn't like about it, which is to say, I have a fair few nitpicky things to cover, but also some advice. To start off, I feel that they may have been able to change the layout of the sprues to accommodate for the colouring of the pieces being split between red and gold, as appropriate to the pieces, because there's a lot of duplicate sprues with the same letters, but are different colours. The main issue I draw from this is that unless you know Japanese, any foreigners without a keen eye will miss the section in the manual where the sprues have the colour labelled on the inventory page, and point out which parts of each respective colour won't be used. For the sake of argument, I'll be building my Zero leaning into gold as a priority over red, as though I were a newcomer to modelling, just to see how far I can make it. If you are yet to purchase or build this kit, my advice is check the inventory page of the manual, grab a couple of highlighters and head through the booklet to highlight any of the red pieces in red and yellow for gold. Right out of the gate, I noticed that the gold pigment they've used in the mix for the sprues is very similar in feel, finish and durability to what I used when I was an injection moulder, producing garden supplies such as pots and planter trays. The gold pieces have a lower stress tolerance to the red, meaning that you'll have to be careful not to apply too much pressure or flex any areas if possible, as the plastic will get white stress lines and visually they look terrible. A decent amount of the gold pieces in my kit had flash, which I have to say, was quite strange to see on a Koto kit. But this many years in, I guess some of the molds used for this kit are getting a fair bit older. While on the topic of the molds, I also noticed that in a few sections, such as the lower half of the hind legs, were prone to popping back open after being pressed tight, which was a bit surprising considering that never happened with my original Zero kits. I'd say these sections do require glue and tape to get them solid tight, but just be cautious and take a good look before you apply any sort of glue as to not ruin the mobility or function of the model. To expand on that, you may notice at a few points throughout this video, I apply Revell's Contactor Professional glue to pieces. This is definitely recommended in many areas, even if the manual doesn't recommend using glue. As a rule of thumb, if the piece is not a coloured, interchangeable part and doesn't move, you can more than likely glue it if you want the kit to be more solid. Test fitting pieces before moving on is also a great way to check if they'll be a nice tight fit, or run the risk of falling off and being lost later on. If you plan on looking at extra detail in the way of paint and weathering, be sure to check out page 25 of the manual before you start. There's a fair few differences in the finished product colouring versus the colours of the pieces out of the box. As for the price, if you can find this kit here in Oz, the price is currently listed about $120 on most sites, but it's typically out of stock on most of them. If you are able to get it for around this sort of ballpark estimate, it is fair. Due to its limited nature, getting a hold of one in the future may prove tricky and much more expensive. As an added opinion, my best mate, who has also just recently finished the same Zero, and being someone who only dips his toes into modelling every now and then, I asked what his thoughts were, and they are as follows. My stance on the Liger Zero Empire version is that aesthetically it's a very cool spin on the classic Zero, and I love its unique red and gold colour scheme. As with most Kotobukiya Zoids, the general assembly felt pretty straightforward, but I'll admit that at times it was a bit tedious, as the organisation of the pieces had me sifting through multiple sprue sheets constantly. This meant that it was a bit tricky to find a consistent flow whilst building, and I ended up breaking it up into multiple sessions. That said, the piece quality is high, snapping together easily, and the final build feels rock solid. Having the end result of the completed Liger sitting in front of me feels super satisfying. I bought this kit in Japan so I didn't have to pay for postage, but for what you get, I think the regular retail price is more than fair. Now something I personally take away from this is that I need to get over my fear of flying and take a trip to Japan, especially with all of the models, specifically Zoids, that I'd have access to, but hopefully it helps form your opinion and point out if this kit is for you. A final point to be made is that if you're having trouble getting a hold of this kit, especially at a decent price, I highly advise you to pick up the regular Zero kit along with some Tamiya TS range sprays and have a crack at painting one for yourself. Just a quick mention, be careful handling the Liger, especially around the chest, as mine fell apart several times before I glued it, when just removing the core or manoeuvring one of the front legs. And here we are, the complete gold heavy build. Honestly, if they went just a tad further and had the complete options for red or gold, made adjustments to the manual, such as actually using the interchangeable symbol, it may have been pretty cool to have a Zero that could be built as the intended Empire type, or pure gold or red. Nonetheless, I'm quite happy to be adding this to my collection, though if we are being honest for a second, the Zero Panzer is still the most badass Liger, and it's just pure coincidence that Panzer is in the name, and I happen to have exceptionally large 135 scale Panzer collection. Now, before I close out, don't fret, I didn't leave it looking dungy. I went through and splashed more of the red pieces through the kit, with just a couple of exceptions here and there where I left extra gold because Korn has to be appeased in some way or another. Its final resting place is similar to most of my Zoids, in some amusing pose amongst my Japanese figures. I hope you enjoyed watching this video and that it was of some use to you if you're considering picking this model up. Hopefully I'll see you next time. Cheers!